What's up, everybody? Welcome to My Endurance Life. If you're new to the group, I want to say welcome. And this group is unlike any other group that I'm sure you've joined on Facebook. My goal is to not only help you in your running journey, but just help create belief in yourself every step of the way. I like to joke around and say that if you hang out with me long enough, I'm going to brainwash you into believing that you can do anything that's possible and to just really challenge yourself and to rethink possible. So again, if you're new to the group, I am a USCO Ultra Running Certified Coach, and I love running, talking about running, and helping runners like you become better runners. And one of the ways I do that is by inviting special guests into the group, like Nadia. I believe that the more resources you have, the better your running journey is. And it's just neat learning from different people along different longs, aspects of their running journey and not, if you're not familiar with Nadia, she has a a running journey. She is living an endurance life. So just to catch you up to speed on everything that, I mean, maybe not even everything, just a brief overview of stuff that Nadia has accomplished in her endurance life. So she is the youngest female to ever run and complete 100 marathons. And she did that at the age of 28. She started running when she was 14 years old with her dad, and they ran the LA Marathon together. So that's an awesome story that she'll be touching on in a little bit. But she's completed more than 150 marathons. What are you at right now?
155.
155 marathons. And then she's also done 16 triathlons, half and full Ironman distances. She's completed 16 ultra marathons. And I think you're training for some pretty awesome ultras coming up, aren't you?
Yeah, some trail. I love the trails in the mountains, so definitely have some on the agenda for this year.
Yeah. So, so stick around and by all means, please leave questions in the comments and Nadia will be checking back in there over the next day or so and just replying back to you because as you saw earlier that we had a couple of technical glitches that we're working through. So just want to give you the best experience possible and just sit back, relax and enjoy it. But as always, before we get into it, I want to give just some recognition to our runners in the group who just crushed it over the weekend. Hey, what's up? Well, I wanted to jump on here real quick. While I'm recognizing all the My Endurance Lifers who ran over the weekend, I want to personally invite you to join the My Endurance Life community. And you can do that by going to myendurancelife.com and clicking on the blue button to join. And then you can get access to live free training like this with me and special guests that I invite into the group and just rethink possible how far you can go. So again, go to myendurancelife.com, click on the blue button, or download one of the free training guides that's in the group. With that being said, let's get back into the call with Nadia. So with that being said, let's get into Nadia. So again, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time. And before we get into the interview, how can people connect with you?
I am on Iron Girl Nadia on all social media platforms. Main one is Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Threads. I'm not really active. I'm on X as well, but not really active. So, but those are the kind of the order. But they're all Iron Girl Nadia.
Okay, perfect. So look her up if you guys haven't looked her up. She has a Instagram is probably your main go-to. I follow her on Instagram and she has tons of great content. Do you still keep up your blog? Because your blog's pretty good too.
I do. I actually during the last couple of years, I reorganized it and just fixed it and edited it. Haven't added anything new because a lot of the stuff just it's like my top 10 trail races, my top 10 ultras, my top 10 international races, race reports from like past events. And also then I started curating tips. Like people want to know like kind of my personal tips. What are your hydration tips? What are your heat training tips? What are your recovery tips? So I would get those questions very often. So like now it's a lot easier. Like if I just curate and
Mhm.
build and write it, now I have it all linked and I could just share like the articles of like, oh, that was so helpful. It's really, really just kind of there as a resource for people to just to kind of revisit whenever they need it.
And what's that web address for people who are curious?
It's in my link in my bio. It's like
Okay.
it's linked up to every single one of my channels. So it's easily you can find it at the top. But it's on my blog.
Okay. Yeah, and she has a link tree inside her Instagram profile that is linked to all that too. So check her out for sure. I think you'll be blown away. And just this weekend, I was watching her run the OC. You did the OC half marathon, right? And
I did.
yeah, it was cool watching her run that with her brother. So first, just want to start by sharing your story. Because a lot of people in the group are familiar with my story, and we were talking offline earlier, it's very similar, just on the flip side, where you started your endurance life journey running with your dad at 14. I got to run the LA Marathon with my daughter when she was 13. So just what inspired you to run at 14? And just yeah.
Honestly, it was just this is like before. I mean, social media did exist a little bit back 26 years ago, but not really. It was just you couldn't really connect like we can these days. So I was just watching the Ironman World Championship on TV,
Mm,
and they do a special every October of just the stories of everyone that's out there, not just the pros, because usually on race day they showcase the pros. But I never really connected with the pros. I have huge respect for them, and even to this day, like what it takes to the dedication and consistency to be performing as they do. But it was everybody else like that was there pursuing a goal. They were overcoming challenge in their life. And here I am, like a 12, 13-year old, just in awe that the human body can do this. First of all, I never knew what a triathlon was. I never knew that the Ironman existed. I never knew that somebody can do all three sports back to back. And then you swim 2.4 miles, do a 112-mile bike ride, and then run a marathon. So all of it, I was just like absorbing it like a sponge. And my heart just opened up because I would see people who balance full-time jobs, balance children, balance like just life and or most of them are going after a goal because they're trying to go through like their own personal therapy and finding clarity in their own life, like overcoming divorce, overcoming a loss in the family, overcoming a setback in their life. And so we give these goals and these challenges to just help us cope with life.
mm.
And as a little girl, I didn't really understand that, of course, but I was in awe of the physical fitness and mental fitness and fortitude that it takes to do this. So I said, then I go, one day I want to do an Ironman. And so I started doing research and looking it up, and I was like, wow, it's very expensive. You have to be 18 years old. It takes a lot. So at this point, since I'm only 13, I'm going to wait till I get to high school, sign up. And that's where I learned about the marathon distance. And I saw people in cross country running 3, 4, 5 miles. I was like, oh, okay, let me go ahead and just join cross country team to see how I can kind of start. I didn't have like a physical background. Like my brother and sister, I have an older sister and a younger brother who were just like normal kids. They were always in team sports, playing soccer, basketball, all the sports, whereas I just could not. I had like two left feet, was not coordinated at all. I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's just not for me. I was always in competitions, like math competitions, art competitions, more just artistic and book oriented. So when I discovered running, it almost gave me this window of like, wow, maybe I do have something in me that can just I could just run. I could just go and I could just keep going. So my first sport that I had joined was boxing. My mom signed
Oh,
me up
really?
for
Wow.
community boxing. And I learned early on that we trained 3 hours a day. I would go to school, just like a normal school day. After school, then I would go check in with my boxing coach, and I would train for 3 hours, and then come home, do my homework, go to sleep, and do it all over again for 5 days a week. So that was kind of normal for me to just train 15 hours a week after school,
Hmm.
after like doing homework and all that stuff. And it basically created this routine and discipline of a student athlete life. Like, okay, I can balance everything and still take care of my priorities of being a student, still take care of my priorities of being a daughter, but also pursue these physical fitness goals. And it was empowering to see that I had the ability to do something that I never thought I could. I never thought I could go, you know, box and compete. And that's how it gave me that confidence of like, you know what, I can run. So let me go ahead and sign up for a race. And I didn't know that there was 5Ks and 10Ks in the community yet. I didn't really know that there's half marathons. I just knew about the LA Marathon, which was our local race that's broadcasted on TV and talked about at school. So I was like, okay, there's somebody in the cross country team who's doing the LA Marathon. I'm like, okay, that's part of the Ironman that ultimately is my goal that I want to do when I get older. So I signed up for the LA Marathon. I sat my parents down. My dad was 40 years old at the time, and I was 14. And I was like, I'm going to do my first marathon. I haven't run any more than 5 miles. Complete ignorance, complete just did not know what I was doing. And I even told like my cross country coach there too, and he was not happy. He's like, "What are you doing? You're too young. You're too like you haven't trained for it. It's just next week." My dad was super excited. He was just is like, "Well, if my daughter's doing it, I'm gonna do it with you." It's like if my daughter has the ability to just and the courage just to try something without like knowing what she's doing, like I'm gonna be there with her. I mean, probably now that I am older, it's like it was probably a security thing. Like I'm gonna look after her, but it's crazy to now look back and for him to share with me. It's like, you inspired me to start running.
Mm,
And to this day, like I inspire him to keep running. And a
mhm.
lot of people have shared just kind of we love the connection you have with your father. We love the connection you have with your family. And it does take work, as we know that as we grow older and older, creating these connections within our own immediate family. It's easier when we're kids, but once your kids become adults, nurturing those relationships, it becomes a lot more harder, but it's worth it. And I think once you start to get really older and you see, your parents getting into the golden years, it's like they almost retract like to kids again, and you want to value every single moment, which is
Mm,
why like now when we share these running moments together, they're extremely, extremely special. So that's kind of how I did my first marathon, just jumped right into it because I was inspired by the Ironman. It was the people like you and me who are balancing life and going after those goals.
yeah. Yeah, that's a really neat, just and then so like you're saying, like I had a similar experience with my daughter, but on the flip side. So, like, I'm sure your father shared with you, like, some of the things he probably thought about you, like, during that. But I always, tell people, like, it wasn't the actual race that I did with my daughter that, like, was like the big moment. Like, yes, as we're training, we're building up, and we all have these goals of like crossing that finish line and getting all that. But it was the hours and hours that we got to spend together train for it. Like, we learned more about each other in those moments training, running with each other for, like you said, like hours every day after school. I'd get off of work, she'd get off of school, and then like night runs in the rain, and just like I learned so much about her. I'm sure your dad just learned so much about you, and just like yeah, you guys inspire us like to be better people, and so it's so cool.
Yeah, I 100% agree because that first marathon we jumped into in ignorance, not training and not knowing what we were doing. Literally a week before the race, we signed up for it. So he had gotten hit hard by a we got
Right.
humbled at what it was like to run that first marathon, thinking like, oh, I could do it, like no problem. But it wasn't until after that first marathon, like, it just a seed was planted and
Mhm.
fire just was ignited, and it's like, wow, I could do that. Imagine if I actually trained for it. Imagine if I actually applied for it. And that's kind of why as a coach as well, I love to coach my athletes, because it's that transformative process that you see, that you guide them through the process of training. Like when you get to the race, that's just a celebration. That's
Mhm.
just like everything that it took to get to that starting line, and everything that happens between that starting line and that finish line becomes that much more special. So yeah, just like how you said, it was the marathons after that we started to train together and to prepare together, and like to go after, like, okay, let's see how much better I can be. Let's see how much better I can get and run stronger and Boston qualify and even race each other because we were pretty close
Mm,
back then. So it was real, real special to share and continue to share it to 26 years later. My dad and I still share races together.
yeah. So, as I was preparing for this call, and looking at your running history, and like you said, you've been doing this for 26 years now. So I thought it'd be neat to like take like a little like decade by decade look, and then what you learned through each of those time periods in your life. So from 14 to like 24, and then 24 to like mid 30s, and then mid 30s to now, because I'm sure in each of those spans, not only did you grow, but you learned something that you apply to the next, you know, batch of like sports and endurance, activities that you got into, which opened doors to more. And yeah, so if you just want to touch, like, think back to like, the first 10 years, this next 10 years, and then to where you are now.
Uh, exactly how you have framed them is how I look back on my running. It's every decade is very special. And the older and older I get, the more I collect the years and I collect the miles, it makes me appreciate more and more what I have. But it also makes me appreciate what I have now, because then I know the challenges and the transformations and changes that are going to happen in the next coming years. And so, of course, the teens are that those discovery years. As we see teens, our own children, or our peers, like our kids, or friends, or whoever we see teens like they're just exploding in that developmental phase of running, of sportsmanship, and to think like how much I grew in those 4 years of high school is like, wow, okay, this is what it feels like to be an athlete, and pushing myself and learning about sports nutrition, learning about how to how to optimize my training as
Mhm.
a young athlete, cross country, track, water polo, flag football, like just everything. And then going into my 20s, I did not appreciate and realize how wonderful those 20s are. I mean, it's just physically like it
Uh-huh.
is, you think your teens are wonderful, but there is nothing like the 20s. And I mean,
Mhm.
it kept getting better and better. And I'm talking about not just so much for performance, but it's just your recovery, like how much you can handle. You could be sleep deprived, you can still eat like crap a little bit, you could still push your body. And I mean, I already recognize that I have a very phenomenal recovery rate. And so back in my 20s, I was racing like crazy. People think I race a lot now, but it's what I was doing in my 20s. There is no way I could handle that now. And I could no longer even want to try to handle what I did in my 20s. Like, I mean, I was teaching full time high school biology. I was already building up my brand at that point. I was already working on my side hustle. I worked part time remotely for an event production company. So I'd go to work. I mean, I would wake up at 4 in the morning every day. I would train for an hour, take care of my dogs, get ready for work, go teach in the classroom for 8 hours, come back immediately, take care of my dogs, prepare and do chores and clean up the house, then do my next training session to maybe 2 hours or so, try to like eat and try to recover, and then hang out with my partner. And I would end up going to sleep probably like midnight and repeat that cycle Monday through Friday. And that's so not good for you to be only sleeping 4 hours a night. Like again, there's no way I could survive that these days. And I would do that 5 days a week on the weekends, and I would do my Ironman training on the Saturdays, and I would take one day off and probably kind of just veg out to reset to do that all over again.
Wow.
So it was just a constant go, 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 working a lot, trying to socialize and and remember, you really didn't have a social life. It was
Mhm.
just a balance of like work, family, home, work, family, home, work, family, home. And but having a great time doing it though. I really, really do look back at the 20s and say, like, wow, I'm really glad I did what I did, because I would have not have known, and I could not have done that now. And it's not to say that you can't start in your 30s, you can't start in your 40s or your 50s, because I train clients who are starting at different decades of their life and discovering like what it is to run and what it is to even just find your own strong. Because I know sometimes we push, let's say, getting faster, but necessarily it's not about getting faster, it's about getting stronger and finding what is that strong, healthier version of you. And that pursuit is what gives us that fire inside and that joy of just getting out the door and moving our bodies. Like that's kind of why I tell my students and my client, I'm students, not my students anymore, my clients and my athletes, like that movement is life and movement is joy. And the more and more that we can move, however that movement is for you, it can bring that joy. So I look back with fondness at my 20s, that they were wonderful years, but it taught me that it's like, okay, life's happening now, and you know, you're getting older. And you would constantly hear it when in my 20s, like, oh, wait till you get to your 30, wait till you get to 35, wait till you get to your 40. And it doesn't stop. Like, I mean, I
Mhm.
still have people telling me, it's almost like, oh, watch out, it's about to hit you, it's about to hit you. I'm like, it's already hit me. But I want to prioritize my health as much as possible, because our investment in ourselves and our investment in our health is extremely important. I mean, we know how much healthcare, Medicare, and all those things are costing, if we just invest in ourselves now, in just breathing, in moving, in taking care of our meditation, our breath work, those little things that don't cost that much, it just costs ourselves to dedicate time to ourselves. Whether like how you have that challenge of 10 minutes a day, like I love that. And I try to encourage them. Like I have like little mobility 10-minute sessions for my athletes, 10-minute yoga, 10-minute mobility, 10-minute strength, 10-minute functional, whatever it is you can do. You've got 10 minutes in a day.
Mhm.
Give that gift to yourself. It is a gift, and it's not about being I think a lot of times as adults, as we go older and older, especially when we have our careers and we have our children, it's like we feel that we're taking time away from them by giving ourselves that time. But it's really important to fill our cup in order to help others and fill their cup. Because if our cup is empty, how can we be the best version of ourselves for others, the ones that we love, our children, our partners, our family, our work? And it's in order to present the best version of ourselves to others, we need to take care of ourselves. And that's everything. That's from our movement, from our emotional health, our mental health. And it's a daily task. It's a daily struggle. And I think that's kind of what my 30s has taught me is I wasn't ready to age. I wasn't ready to, biologically speaking, as a biology teacher. I mean, physiology is my extreme passion. I was going to go into medicine first, And so things physiologically change dramatically depending who you are. It can happen at 28, 29. Usually it's 30, 31. Things just start to change dramatically. And we just have to learn to adjust, learn to adapt, learn to evolve with those changes that are happening with our body physiologically. And it continues to change every single year. And in 5 year increments is where you can kind of do the comparison and see, like, well, 35 is a lot different than 30,
Hmm.
and 40 is a lot different than 35. And that's definitely what my 30s has been. It has been a a lesson of patience, a lesson of transformation within myself, and also learning to love the aging process, because I had gotten so high off of my 20s and what I was doing in my 20s. And it's like, it almost felt like I came crashing down. And I was like, okay, how can I make value of my life now? What am I doing now that's going to give me joy and appreciation? And usually it it's when you lose things, you have setbacks, you have loss in the family, you have challenges in your business, you lose your business, and drastic life events happen to us. And when that stuff starts to happen, you start to realize, like, my health is valuable. Like, my emotional health is dwindling, my mental health is dwindling, and that in turn then starts to hit my physical health. And this is just life events happening to us. And so that's a lot of things happened in my 30s, and I just realized, like, okay, I'm not in that bubble of 20s anymore. And now that these challenges are coming at me, like, I do need to prioritize taking care of myself in order to present the best version of myself, because I started to realize, like, I wasn't as happy anymore, or I wasn't as hopeful anymore. My name is Nadia, and actually my name means hope. And I started to reflect and think, like, I feel that because these life events are happening to me, they're challenging me. I don't ever want to become cynical. I don't ever want to lose hope. I don't ever want to just wake up and just not want to be awake. And I've had periods in my life, very dark periods in my 30s, where it was so dark, where I didn't want to wake up anymore. I had lost my business. I had lost everything, especially during the pandemic. And there was just challenges that made me feel like, okay, I need a reset. I need a restart. And that's okay. It's okay to start over. It's okay to just go through the struggle, and there's going to be an other side. And so it was a big roller coaster in every which way, and understanding that I can evolve, I can adapt, I can overcome. And of course, just seeing that modeled by my parents. My parents are a huge inspiration to me. And, you know, they've done that in their 20s. They lived different lives, of course, than I have. They were immigrants. They immigrated and left everything in their 20s. They had to start from the bottom and build something in their 30s and 40s and 50s, but still seeing them transforming their lives at 50, at 60, being dedicated, how much it is dedication to your health and to your movement. It is a gift to be able to move. And when that gift is taken away for whatever reason, even if it's temporary or permanent, begin to realize, like, okay, I need to value what I do have now. And so I now, I welcome each year that gets collected. And I'm going to be turning 40 this year.
Hmm.
So it's going to be a new decade of my life. And I now welcome it in a way where I'm going to be a master's athlete. And
Mhm.
so now I can explore and see how fast and strong can I be as a master's athlete, because it's going to be a different transformative process in itself. So I'm excited for that next phase.
Yeah. Um, so when those struggles arise in your life, like how much, because this is just my personal opinion, that before like endurance sports was entered into my life, if a struggle ever came up or like something hard, like it would, I would take it really hard. It would crush me. But ever since I started pushing myself with endurance sports, and like as the challenges got harder through the training or through the races, and finding ways like out of those low points, like when something happens in real life now, it's like easier for me to manage in my mind and see a solution to it, because I've been through, I've put myself in such hard places. So, has that helped you at all? Do you see any correlation?
Definitely, yes. Yeah, I think a lot of us, as endurance athletes, we learn that whether it's temporary or it's a process, I kind of express it in a way when I'm out there in a race. I embrace the pain. I embrace the pain cave because sometimes that physical pain, the good pain that you're feeling while you're pushing yourself to a new limit helps process the emotional pain that we might be carrying. And all of us carry these different types of weights on our backs, whatever it is that we're carrying in our lives. And so are when we're pushing ourselves in an endurance event, it helps open your mind, it helps open your heart and process what we're feeling inside. I think a big problem that we have in our American culture is that we're pushing nonstop, that we're not given the space and the time to really pause and reflect and breathe and say, why do I feel the way I feel right now? Why is that important? How can I, and it's really that questioning, that self-questioning that is important for us. Um, I make it a priority now because if not, I've been in very, very dark places mentally, and I know what it feels like to be there. I don't ever want to go back there. And it's a proactive process to work on every single day, but it's something that it's an investment for life. And everybody that's around you who loves you, those important people in your life see a difference. They want to see you happy. They want to see you light up. And so if you take care of yourself, in essence, you are taking care of your family members too, because you're modeling happiness. You're modeling investment. You're modeling just what you want to see your loved ones do. And so what do we do is we're inspired by example. We're inspired by the others, that people that we connect with. If they can do it, I can do it. And so
Mhm.
that's why I think it's very, very important to pursue that internal joy of happiness and balance and peacefulness and clarity that endurance sports thankfully provides for us.
So what would you say to that person who is on the edge? Maybe they've run a 5K or a 10K or maybe even a half marathon, but they're still nervous about signing up for a marathon or maybe even an ultra marathon. How would you not convince, but just encourage somebody to take the step, take a leap of faith that you can do it?
The greatest and the fastest runners out there all started out with one step. They all
Mhm.
started out with learning to run 1 mile. And all of us, when we were born, we didn't know how to walk. We all learned first how to crawl before we learned how to walk, before we learned how to run. And we didn't learn immediately on the first try. What did we have to do when we crawled? We had to try over and over and over and over until we finally got up and walked. And so we lose that kind of that hope of trying over and over and over again. It's ignorance, yes. When we're little, we keep trying, that youth, that maybe being naive, but we need to replant that inside of us, of that hope of I can try again. I could try again when I'm 30. I could try again when I'm 40, when I'm 50, when I'm 60. I mean, I see the beauty in training some of my athletes who are in their 50s and 60s, and they're getting PRs because now they're training right, because we're listening to what their body is communicating to them. We are listening to what are the weaknesses in your training plan that we can adjust, that can help you find your personal strong at 57, at 64. And those are like the beautiful moments that I love to see, because what do we see? And then when they cross that finish line, that internal joy of a child. Like it's
Mhm.
just that when we play, we are our happiest, and we need to learn, and we need to make sure we're still playing in our lives.
Yeah. That's awesome because it's funny because I love running for me is playing. Like I'm a trail runner. And so it's like I'm one of those like and I also came from like a motocross background too. So it's like I look at the trails in a different way than most people do. So it's like I'm running up high on the berms and like coming down and get just it's a playground and I love it. And so I try to inspire that to like the group members and the people out there and the people I'm fortunate enough to work with. Is just like have fun. Like who cares about your pace? Just go out there and have fun and just enjoy it. Because if we're not enjoying this now, like it's not going to translate into wanting us to do it over and over again. So, yeah, go back to being a kid. That's that's so rad. So I want to be respectful of your time. So I got three more things for you. What are your top three tips to a new endurance athlete?
Top three tips. Number one is consistency. That is going to be your biggest ally to make improvement, make progress, no matter who you are. I think a lot of times we might get clouded by social media by looking. Comparison is a thief of joy, and we sometimes see people who are doing back-to-back long runs, or they're doing 20 milers, or they're doing 200 milers, or doing 100 milers. Like, what am I doing? Like, why is it I can't even just get that out the door? I think it's really, really number one, thinking like, you know what can I do? What are the small steps I can do every single day that will compound and actually add up to reaching my big goals in the long run? In no pun intended, but that number one is consistency. Number one, that is going to be your biggest ally. Number two is this journey of fitness, this journey of endurance, this journey of aiming for big goals that make you afraid. It's not linear, and it's not always going to be sunshine and wonderful like social media shows us. That's like, oh, look at me, I'm going out and killing it every single day. And so that number two tip is make sure you write down what your reason, your why are you starting this journey? Write it down somewhere, post it up, make it a poster, put it in your garage, put it in your bathroom, have it there, because that why is going to get you out the door on the days that you struggle, because we have setbacks are going to happen, whether it's a small niggle, whether it's an injury, whether it's a challenge at work, whether it's being micromanaged by a boss, or whatever it is, it's going to challenge us. And so reflecting back on that why is going to be big to get you out the door. And number three is train yourself like an athlete. You are an athlete. I think a lot of times is we're like, oh, I'm running, or I'm a jogger, or I'm just going to try to like do a little bit here every day. No. You train yourself like an athlete. Create that champion mindset in your mind, because it's only going to be an investment in your health. Look at your sleep. Look at your sleep quality. Look at your nutrition. How are you nurturing yourself wholesomely? How are you nurturing what you're consuming? That goes from what you're watching to what you're listening to, what we are who you're associating with. Like, how are you doing your pastimes? Like, all of these things, like, it matters for an athlete. So I would say make sure you try to train like you're a champion, because you are a champion in your own skin, and treat your body like a temple, because we only get this one. And so it's so important. So consistency, your why, and train like a champion because you're an athlete.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, I believe that too. Like I believe the words you say to yourself matter, and you believe them. And if you say them to yourself enough, that eventually you're going to get there. No matter how many tries it takes you. But I believe if you never stop, if you don't quit on yourself, then you can do amazing things. So the last question, and we'll wrap this up, is so what does my endurance life mean to you in a personal context?
I think number one thing is you learn to endure. You really learn to keep going. That's the biggest thing, is putting one foot in front of the other, because there are going to be times where you don't want to put one foot in front of the other. There's the times that you just don't want to keep going. And we're not talking about in a race or talking about a training session. There's just going to be life challenges that we've all experienced in our life. All of us. But it's just literally the things that my dad has told me is like, no matter what, you really don't give up. You keep trying. And there's been, like I said, there's been some dark times where I'm afraid to share completely, because I break down thinking about those times. But the number one thing is my dad always says is just, if I'm going to keep going, you keep going. And to see what my dad has gone through in his life, it inspires me to keep going. And that's kind of what we're made to just endure and just to keep going.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it's so neat that Nadia means hope. And because when you said that, it reminded me of a Bible verse that it says that struggles build endurance, and endurance builds character, and character builds hope. And I think that's super awesome. So yeah. Well, thank you, Nadia. I really appreciate your time, and just wish you the best, and just really thank you for jumping on here and sharing with us.
Of course. Thank you so much, Eric, for having me, and everyone in the community. Yes, please reach out to me if you have questions. I'm always an open book. I'm happy to guide you wherever I can, and I hope to stay connected.